Hi, so quick announcement before this video gets started. I actually made it a couple months ago, but I had a big identity crisis with this channel that I wasn't really going to talk about, and I kind of shelved it, but looking back at it, I like it, thought I'd release it anyways. My friend Eli edited this video for me, and he did a really just a great job, so it would be a shame not to release it. So here it is. If you like it, like, comment, subscribe, all of that. If you want me to do more of this, because this isn't the entire project I was planning, comment below and I will probably get around to it. But anyways, just get into the video now. Alright, goodbye, thank you. What happened to DC? You guys used to be the undisputed kings of the animated superhero film. I mean, I guess you still are because no one else is pursuing that market, unless you count the Spider-Verse movies. But I'm more talking about the low budget stuff, the straight to DVD ones, the limited theatrical release movies. Catch it at an AMC for 3 days only. Trust us, it's great. In the mid-2010s, DC decided to make a coherent movie universe based on their popular New 52 comics. I have a contention with these movies. Technically, Justice League Flashpoint Paradox is considered a part of the New 52 universe, which was labeled the DCAMU by fans, but I've always assumed it was a sequel to Justice League Doom, which is a sequel to Justice League Crisis on Two Earths, because, I don't know, the art style is more similar between those, the Justice League Crisis movies and Flashpoint than Flashpoint is the New 52, and I don't know why you'd start your universe with a movie that's a reboot of a universe that never even existed.
What?
So, in my eyes, Flashpoint Paradox is not the start of this universe, just like Apocalypse War isn't part of the Tomorrowverse, and I won't be talking about it here. If you want my thoughts, maybe, I think it's pretty good. Maybe I'll make a video about it later if people want me to. But anyways, I'm going to be going over all 14 of the DC AMU films, but that would be a crazy long video, so I'm going to be splitting it up into 3 parts. So we're starting here with part 1, the one that's like all about Batman. But first, I need to preface, this channel is never about just shitting on movies or the people who make them. There's something I never really touch on, which is very true, which is that the script a writer hands in is basically never the one that gets made. Unless you're Tarantino, but whatever, no one is. It gets taken by producers, they make changes, cut things, ask for rewrites, the director may remove things for their vision or practical reasons. So when I point out missed opportunities in the writing or things I think could have been done different / better, the original writer probably addressed that in one of their earlier drafts. I make these videos because I think it's good advice for writers and it gives easy to understand examples. A lot of this channel, and the reason I approach it like that is for me, because I write, and I think this encourages me to think critically and observe good writing patterns. Alright, so that's what this is about. This is not, I don't call these reviews. Secondly, I'm going to try and completely avoid making comparisons to other films or books. Seminal pieces of work like Citizen Kane or Crime and Punishment. The gold standard for these movies is going to be like Mask the Phantasm, Under the Red Hood, and like Star Wars. Because every time you bother criticizing something like this, people defend it by going, oh, well, what do you expect, The Godfather? As if a movie being made purely for entertainment means you can't expect more than the characters fighting. Like Batman Beyond, Return of the Joker is an amazing film. It's exciting, stylistic, and has strong character work and really interesting, fun ideas. That's all I want. Like, there's a large quality gap between the 400 Blows and Attack Force. And these movies should be somewhere in between. So with that in mind, let's get started with Justice League War. When the piece of fecal matter known as Justice League, or I guess Justice League now, was released in 2017, there was a common sentiment on the internet. Oh, well, why didn't you just adapt Justice League War? You already have the perfect Justice League movie. Just, make it in live action now. But would that really have been any better? I mean, yes, but that's a low bar. See, this movie was tasked with the very important job of establishing a foundation for the entire universe going forward. So the core cast of this movie is Superman, Batman, Hal Jordan, Barry Allen, Cyborg, Shazam, and Wonder Woman. That's 7 characters if you were counting. That's a pretty big number. And this movie's in a weird place because on the one hand, it's pretty bare fucking bones. Like, Darkseid just shows up. The Justice League just assembles. and they beat his ass. Like, there's no setup or context before his invasion. There are parademons, then he shows up. It's not like Avengers, where unraveling Loki's plan was part of the plot, and there was some kind of like a push and pull where at times it felt like he was in control, and sometimes they were in control. Like I said, it's simple. On the other hand, it's got to lay the foundation for the main Justice League, because I'm sure they'll all get equal treatment going forward. So what are the Justice League members even like in this? Well, I mean, it's kind of hard to say for some of them. I think the biggest non-presence here is the Flash. Looking back at my notes, his name doesn't even come up once. In fact, the plot for the first half of this movie is just introducing the Justice League one by one. Batman is actually pretty good here. Not in the, oh, he's Batman, so he gets to do all the cool stuff kind of way that DC can kind of like relapse into. Like, he can't box out parademons. He's a cool strategist character, and the movie acknowledges his power deficit. Like, the first scene where he meets Superman is one of the best moments in this entire universe. Batman tries to fight Superman, but he's just completely unable to do anything to him. He tries to escape, but Superman is always able to stop him, which is great because it makes both characters look cool. Even though he's being completely outclassed, Batman looks extremely capable. On that note, this movie also gets Superman pretty well. Wonder Woman, however, is super misrepresented in my opinion. Diana, at her core, is a fish out of water character. She's an immortal warrior raised on a secret island of ancient Greek warrior woman, so she's obviously not going to understand social norms and customs of modern day America. That can lead to some light comedy and fun moments of the character, but for some reason a lot of people like to miswrite Diana in one of two ways. A bloodthirsty warrior who will kill first and ask questions never, or a 5-year-old who just developed object permanence. And this movie writes her as the latter. In her introduction, her literal existence is being protested outside the White House, and you may wonder, in a world full of superheroes like Batman, Green Lantern, Superman, and Shazam, why is Wonder Woman specifically being protested? What did she do to deserve this? Then you spend some time with her and it all starts to make sense. She is very clearly a liability. She's almost as powerful as Superman, except she acts like a child and waves her sword around like a toy when she gets excited. Now, personally, if the US was endorsing some kind of superpowered child with the ability to fly, lift cars over their heads, and carrying a giant-ass ancient sword, I would probably be concerned too. And it's a shame because Wonder Woman is actually a really great character when she's written properly.
The lasso compels you. Now tell us your truth.
I cross-dress in a Wonder Woman outfit. It makes me feel powerful.
She's stoic but gentle, she's a warrior but she's compassionate and hopeful, she's wise, but she also has a temper. But you get none of these qualities out of her in this movie. She's just someone who shows up and is like the warrior archetype, like the loudmouth, like, I'm here to do battle, I'm here to destroy things. Kind of like the way Thor is written when he first comes to Earth.
This drink, I like it.
I know, it's great, right?
Another!
Which can be part of who Diana is, but there's so many more subtleties to her character. The only character they attempt to give any emotional depth to is Cyborg. Like, he's just a kid in high school who wants his dad to come to one of his football games, but his dad is just like, Victor, you fucking idiot. Have you not seen the news? There are superheroes flying around. Do you not yet realize that you're obsolete? You're a joke, a has-been. And I'm not being uncharitable. His dad literally does call him obsolete, and he is like, listen, bitch, there's superheroes, fuck you.
Beings who can tear through buildings and outrun race cars will make what you can do obsolete.
There's no resolution to this conflict, at least not like a real one. His dad has to turn him into Cyborg to save his life, and doing that now sees his son as having value, which isn't a resolution because Silas never changes and Cyborg has no say in the matter. He doesn't even learn to love Victor for who he is. He just sees him as valuable because now he's bonded with the machine that he was obsessively researching. What kind of message is this? Green Lantern is also in this, but he's kind of just treated like a joke. There's not much to him. Same goes for Shazam, unfortunately. They both get sidelined because this movie has more important things to focus on, like Darkseid floating. Which is insane, because I feel like you could cover this entire plot in 45 minutes. The final character in this movie is Darkseid. Now, Darkseid is a pretty popular character, huh? Everybody loves him. He's DC's Thanos, right? Darkseid has been getting portrayed as a kind of space warlord, a guy who leads armies to invade planets and gets into scraps with superheroes, but that's not exactly who Darkseid is. He was part of Jack Kirby's original New Gods comics. You may have noticed the title of that is New Gods. So he's a god. Think you can guess what Darkseid was supposed to be the god of? I'll give you a hint. His name is literally Dark Side. Yeah, he's supposed to be the god of fucking evil. He's Satan. But in a lot of recent media, Darkseid is written like Mongol. You know, if you replaced him in this universe with Mongol, nothing would be lost. In fact, it would be a small gain because this universe would be slightly more comic accurate. And I know, this movie's adapting the New 52, and this is how Darkseid is written in the New 52 and in the original Justice League War comic book by Jeff Johns. But that doesn't mean I have to like it. I think writing Darkseid as a complex embodiment of evil rather than a big goon who gets his eyes stabbed out is much more interesting. But instead he shows up and his master plan is to terraform Earth like in Man of Steel. But hey, it makes more sense than the Justice League's plan, which I alluded to earlier, which is just stab out Darkseid's eyes. And I'm not even joking, that literally ends up being their whole plan to beat him. I should probably get into summarizing the plot of the movie so far. I'll scrub back to the beginning. There are a series of kidnappings in Gotham, leading the police to believe that Batman is responsible because the figure caught on camera seems to be wearing his cape. Batman is only the greatest detective in this world because the standard for police work is like just non-existent. We as the audience are aware that the kidnapper is really a parademon. We see Green Lantern chasing it. It takes a mother box before it's also confronted by Batman, who just happens to collide with the two of them because he's trying to clear his name. Before they can get any answers out of it though, the parademon charges the mother box and fucking explodes. This parademon should be given a promotion because he was given Green Lantern and Batman the business. I mean, he's dead now. He blew up, so he can't be promoted. Maybe like they can put his name on an important wall back on Apocalypse. Maybe that'll work. Batman decides that the only way to get answers is to take this mother box to another alien, which is Superman. So Batman and Superman go to Gotham to talk with him. And he just immediately assumes that they're working with parademons because it's not a team-up movie if we don't get a superhero versus superhero fight. Of course, they all decide to work together in the end. Darkseid sees that the heroes are onto him and he orders a full invasion of Earth. This is what causes the Justice League to assemble for the first time just as Darkseid arrives. And he just drops a generational beatdown on them and has Superman knocked out and taken back to his ship. The movie attempts to have some bonding between Batman and Green Lantern when Hal tries to go after Superman and get him back. Batman stops. He's like, listen, your arm's broken. You know, that's a bad idea. Batman tries to motivate him by telling him that they're similar because they're both regular humans and out of their depth. Except out of all humans, Green Lantern should be the only one in this universe who's not out of place. He's a space cop. He works for a bunch of giant blue aliens. This should just be Tuesday. Like, aliens is not new to him. It's new to Batman. So yeah, he leaves to go break Superman out, and before he goes, he tells Hal that he should step up and unite the team. Which could be interesting, because Hal Jordan has kind of been treated like a cocky asshole who's in over his head and doesn't know what he's doing. But no, Batman's reasoning is just, you're loud, so if you'll talk, they'll hear you because you're loud. There's another scene where Cyborg is giving some very on-the-nose dialogue about how he's a freak now, and he has no home anymore because he's a robot. Then he crushes a parademon with his hands, and Shazam responds by saying, well, you fit right in with us, as if the only trait these people have is that they punch bad guys, which is kind of indicative of how they're going to be treated in this universe going forward. I mean, maybe I'm being too harsh. It's not like Shazam and Cyborg have anything in common. Yeah, you know, if only he had a way to relate to feeling like you have no place in the world. I mean, oh yeah, that's too bad. He's not like a foster kid living in a group home or anything like that. That would just make too much sense. Hey, whatever. At least Green Lantern gets a chance to shine, you know, straighten up and lead the team, gain some respect maybe, come up with a brilliant plan. But of course not. He just stumbles over his words, and then Wonder Woman comes up with the dumb idea to stab out Darkseid's eyes.
We need to play offense. Cast those beams out of his eyes, right?
It's settled then. We blind him.
That's as good a plan as any. Yeah, we follow.
Like, why commit to giving Hal a moment to seem competent when you just fall back on making him an idiot? And this is also doubly offensive to Darkseid because it reduces him to a guy who shoots lasers. I cannot even begin to express how uninteresting he is in this movie as both a character and a concept. And it all starts with his introduction to his movie. I'll even be charitable. I will not count the fact that we saw him sitting around in a chair like a Saturday morning cartoon villain for the first half of the movie. I will count his first arrival on Earth as his introduction. He just floats out of a portal and Green Lantern goes, guys, I think that guy might be bad news. And then Darkseid just proceeds to float in a straight line and drop the I am death speech. But it's just pure lip service. Compare this to Red Hood's introduction in Under the Red Hood. It's a simple scene with simple dialogue, but it manages to make Red Hood seem like a bigger threat in the context of the story. His entrance is treated with respect, and he quickly strikes fear into the other characters in the scene. It's clear that he has a larger plan and goals that aren't exactly clear to the audience yet. What is Darkseid's plan again? Terraform Earth? Float menacingly? Why? I'm not entirely sure. It just seems like something a bad guy would do. Superman is trapped in Darkseid's base. Batman breaks in and he fights and beats Desaad and frees Superman. Meanwhile, back in the city, the Justice League is, they've stabbed out Darkseid's eyes and they're trying to fight him, but he's still beating the shit out of them until Batman and Superman return. Cyborg opens up a portal, and the team works together and they all push Darkseid back into the portal. They all have to work together to push him in.
We should take Bikini Bottom and push it somewhere else.
And they do it. Hooray! The movie's over. So would this have been an improvement over Justice League 2017? Yes, 1000%. But there are too many missed opportunities to help us connect to the characters or even present an engaging story. The story is just that a big alien appears, then the Justice League teams up so they can push him through a portal together. So the payoff of them all having to work together and physically push Darkseid through the portal might have been done well if there was more of an effort to make us feel like these characters were all a bunch of cocky assholes who thought they could do it on their own, and there was something more than just a big, strong alien that literally requires their combined strength to push them. But as it is, this movie is fine. It's not a bad introduction. It's entertaining enough. I don't hate this one. But it's time to move on to the next movie. The next movie to release in this universe is Batman's solo outing, Son of Batman. This movie has a lot more room to stretch its figurative legs. It's not establishing a universe. It's not introducing 7 characters. You have 75 minutes to tell a compelling story. Under the Red Hood did that. So can you. All you have to do is exercise restraint and don't cram the movie full of
No, God! No, God!
holy balls. So, as you may have been able to piece together, this movie focuses on Batman and his son Damian Wayne. Personally, I'm a Damian Wayne enjoyer. I know he can be a bit controversial in the community. A lot of people really find this guy annoying. But over the years, with some good writing, he's won over a lot of fans. And if these movies are known for anything, it's smart writing and patience, so we should be fine. The movie opens up in a League of Assassins hideout. Right off the bat, we're introduced to Damian, Ra's al Ghul, and Talia al Ghul, who are Damian's mother and his grandfather. Ra's al Ghul is the leader of the International League of Assassins, and he is hyping up Damian, his grandson, telling him that one day he is going to rule the League, when suddenly everything just goes fucking sideways. Assassins try to jump Ra's, and helicopters start bombing the place. Now you might be wondering, who's behind this attack? Well, Deathstroke, of course, famous Batman villain with ties to the League of Assassins. Important news update. Deathstroke is not a Batman villain. This should be pretty basic comic knowledge, but if you've really just become a Batman fan in the past decade or so, I'll forgive you if you weren't aware. Now, I'm not opposed to Batman and Deathstroke having some kind of rivalry. I actually think it makes sense. What I don't like is framing him like he's Batman's villain, like he's a Batman villain. He's Nightwing's arch nemesis. Nightwing is in this movie, but he does not ever address Deathstroke, and I don't think he even knows who he is. That's like if Lex Luthor appeared in a Green Lantern movie and had insane beef with Green Lantern, but Superman was in the movie and they never talked to each other. Just to give some context to that. That's how crazy it is. I am generally not a big fan of how they handled Deathstroke in this movie. He was Ra's al Ghul's right-hand man until Damian was born. Then he got jealous of a baby and he left to form his own army so he could take over the League. This is bad for several reasons. First off, I think his backstory super sucks. Slade in the comics is kind of like an evil Captain America. He took a super soldier serum and used the powers it gave him for evil. He has no ties to the League in the comics. And beyond that, Deathstroke is just supposed to be a pure evil bastard because he wants to be. In this movie, he had something he felt was rightfully his taken away from him, and that's what caused him to turn on the League. But Deathstroke just does evil shit because it's evil and he loves evil. Deathstroke in the comics cares about two things only: money and his contracts and underage children. So technically three things. But he's not an idealist, he has no loyalties, he doesn't want to take over the world or run the League of Assassins. He just wants to kill people and get paid for it. So it's very pathetic to see him fighting Ra's and just crying during their fight about how he had his title stolen from him. Like, just shut the fuck up and kill people. That's your job. Slade's entire gimmick is that he doesn't give a fuck about anything. So anyways, during their fight, Ra's gets burned alive by a missile strike and then falls like 6 stories. Damian fights Slade over his body and stabs out Slade's eye. Like, what's with these movies and stabbing out eyes? Slade shakes his fist in the air and says, "You'll pay for that," before making his escape with the rest of his team. Talia grabs Damian and is like, "I'm dropping you off at your dad's place." We then cut to Gotham where we see Killer Croc stealing some drugs. And then in the background, Batman speaks in the shadows with this goofy ass introduction. He's like, "Waylon Jones, aka Killer Croc."
Waylon Jones, aka Killer Croc.
Like, yeah, he knows his own fucking name, dumbass. Killer Croc is hopped up on some kind of super steroids that gives him a stronger tail for some reason. Then Croc goes, "You know the problem with steroids, Batman? It shrinks your dick." And then Talia tases his ass and saves Batman because he was getting his ass kicked. The two go off to talk, and Talia straight up admits to pulling a Bill Cosby special on Batman, and her justification for it is just saying, "But was it all bad?" And Batman says no, which implies that some of it was, but whatever. Talia drops Damian on Batman because he thinks he'll be better off there in Gotham with the most heavily targeted individual in the city. Not sure why she thought that would be safer. At the Batcave, Damian is confused why Alfred is the only servant. Batman tells him Alfred isn't a servant, he's a friend, which is kind of a weird thing to say about the dude who makes your breakfast, cleans your room, scrubs your toilet, and cuts the crust off your sandwiches. Damian tries to boss Alfred around, and Alfred just tells him to suck his nuts. We get introduced to Kirk Langstrom, who's doing some experiments in his basement. He gets his ass beat into unconsciousness by a ninja. He wakes up in his kitchen, and Deathstroke is holding him and his family hostage. We find out that Langstrom was doing something for Ra's, but now that Deathstroke has taken over, he's putting Langstrom in less accommodating conditions. Deathstroke watches as Damian chops up all his shrubbery in the front yard, and you can see him getting all excited with the prospect of a new Robin. Alfred in this movie straight up does not like Damian, which is pretty funny, and also fair enough. As I said, Damian is kind of a dick. He breaks into Bruce's office and is already pitching plans to track down Deathstroke and kill him, but Batman hits him with the classic, "If you kill your enemies, you're no better than them" speech. My least favorite Batman platitude because it makes no sense. Batman clearly understands he can kill for morally justifiable reasons. One of Batman's closest friends is Jim Gordon, a cop in the most violent city on Earth. His most trusted ally is Alfred, a guy we know has killed people in the military and someone that we know will kill if it comes down to it. Batman won't take a life himself because he has to hold on to his ideology that all life has value. He also holds other heroes to this standard for one very obvious reason. A hero has greater means than the average person, whether it's superior training or gear, to avoid killing. Whereas a cop in Gotham doesn't have those resources. If Officer Jimmy was getting shot at in Gotham and returned fire and by some stroke of luck hit Joker in the head, do you think Batman would look at him as being just as bad as Two-Face or Scarecrow or Riddler? No! That's why I hate when Batman says this stupid stuff. There are reasons for Batman not to kill, and they're more philosophically complex and much less black and white than all killing is wrong. Talia leads an attack on Deathstroke's fortress. I guess this is why she left Damian with Batman. Her and her ninjas literally Naruto run into a trap and all get taken out immediately except for Talia, who's just captured. We go to Arkham Asylum where Killer Croc is going through the craziest withdrawal I've ever seen. Batman realizes that Langstrom was the one giving Croc the steroids and tries to get more details out of him. To accomplish this, he literally rips off Croc's tail like a plug from a wall socket. Batman gives him a lead on Langstrom's lab where he gets jumped by a vampire bat gorilla. It commits self-delete by tackling Batman out of a window, which is good news for Batman because Deathstroke called in an Eagle airstrike on the lab and turned it into a parking lot. Damian jumps one of Deathstroke's goons across town, but this motherfucker will literally die before he'll talk, and Damian is willing to just kill him. Luckily for him, Nightwing stops in and beats Damian's ass before he can execute the guy. We get back to the Batcave where Batman is pretty pissed at Damian for trying to lob a dude's head off, but he decides to make Damian the new Robin, even though he's proven to be nothing but unpredictable and violent. A new lead takes him to an abandoned sports arena where they find Langstrom. Damian immediately goes sicko mode and makes a bunch of noise. Then he grabs a sword and tries to murder the first person he sees. There's a word for this. Liability. They then get jumped by a bunch of Bat Ninjas while Langstrom tries to escape. They beat up the Bat Ninjas with relative ease and catch Langstrom. He explains that Roz is paying him to make an army of Bat Ninjas called Operation Airstrike because, in his exact words, no military could withstand an army of flying superpowered ninjas using sonar in the dead of night, and the audience is expected not to laugh. Damian talks about how he was being raised to lead humanity one day, but he doesn't seem to have any skills outside of fighting. He's not diplomatic, he has no social skills, and he doesn't seem super well educated either. He's just an assassin, which is fine, but how is he gonna lead the entire planet? And I know he's just a kid, and kids aren't supposed to have great people skills. Well, you know what else kids aren't supposed to have? Great murdering skills, okay? So, I don't know. This is a more minor nitpick, but I think it would have made a bit more sense for Damian to be Roz's greatest weapon. After all, Roz believed he was immortal. He thought the Lazarus Pit was always going to keep him alive. So him planning to live forever and rule Earth with Damian as his sword would have just been a bit more consistent. Or, you rewrite Damian to make him more arrogant and full of himself, but still diplomatic and social. Anyways, Batman and Robin save Langstrom's family. Deathstroke manages to get a message to Robin telling him he has Talia, and if Robin doesn't go to a certain set of coordinates, he'll kill her. He also calls Batman a sperm donor and tells Robin to come alone. So Robin swims 50 miles to an oil rig to confront Deathstroke, not knowing Batman is coming after him. Damian gets to the bottom of the oil rig and finds out Deathstroke is using the rig to pump Lazarus juice to sell to people who paid top dollar. Deathstroke tries to shoot Damian, but Talia jumps in front of the bullet. Batman uses the Lazarus Pit to revive Talia and leaves Damian to chase down Deathstroke with a sword while he screams about killing him. Batman seems okay with this. Deathstroke stabs him through the arms with swords, which I'm only pointing out because I wanted to bring up how badly this movie wants to be rated R. Like, blood splatters in like every single fight scene. There's several adult references, and Nightwing even tries to drop an F-bomb. This movie just wants to be rated R and mature, but they won't double down and commit. So it stands out when compared to its plot about flying, super-powered sonar bat ninjas. Damian refuses to kill Deathstroke because he's decided he's Batman's son. Now, this could have been a great moment for the character, but this requires something called a character journey, which is when a character starts in one place and ends up in another. This movie starts with Damian's character as a violent and vindictive killer, and ends with him choosing to show mercy out of respect for his father. But the journey that leads him to that point is non-existent. There are no moments where Batman earns his respect. There's no scene where Batman opens up to and explains why he values human life the way he does. There's just one scene where he yells at Damian about how killing Slade would make him just as bad as their enemies. Apparently, that extremely flawed statement is enough to undo an entire lifetime of brainwashing by a centuries-old assassin cult. Whatever, instead of putting in hard work to organically make Damian grow into this character, they just have him suddenly change because it's what the story wanted. And that's it for this movie. This movie had a lot of potential, but Bruce and Damian never get a chance to bond as characters. They just yell and disagree, then go their separate ways until the next scene. The dynamic of Batman having to prove himself as a father and a leader would be super interesting, and a character arc of Damian realizing that he does want Bruce's approval would actually culminate in a real emotional payoff at the end when Damian decides that he values Bruce's approval over revenge. The Batman DCU movie will likely be similar to this in some ways, because they're also doing Damian. I'm just hoping they deliver a memorable and efficient and well done dynamic between Bruce and Damian. Fingers crossed. So this movie opens up on some military submarine when it's suddenly attacked by unknown forces. Obviously, we as the audience know these are Atlanteans, and attacking military submarines is generally considered what us Americans call a big no-no. And we cut to the surface and follow Steve Trevor, who's looking for Cyborg. We then get to see what it's like for Cyborg to dream. I think there's a kind of interesting implication with this scene. In his dream, he's back in his fully human body running through a park when he's stopped by the sentient shell of his cyborg armor, which tells him it's time to wake up. Cyborg tries to fight, but he's ultimately forced awake by the computer. Now, I'm probably reading too much into it, but there's something weirdly existential about your brain shutting down while you sleep, but the computer that controls your body never truly sleeping or being gone, just waiting there for whatever it needs to reactivate your brain. So, good job, movie. I like that. Trevor asks Cyborg to investigate the submarine attack and asks if he can get the rest of the League involved. Cyborg just tells him they never even come in and the Justice League is like an illusion. We then cut to one of my least favorite DC tropes, the Wonder Woman and Superman romance. I hate this every time they do it because Superman already has a set-in-stone love interest, Lois Lane. It's not like Batman, who has had several love interests throughout the decades. It's always been Superman and Lois. So when they change it, I don't like it. And Lois and Wonder Woman already has Steve Trevor, so I don't understand. But there's no time to focus on that because it's time to introduce Aquaman. We get a quick line explaining to us that his father recently died before he's jumped by a gang of bar patrons. He manages to beat them all, but with significant struggle. I know he's not fully Aquaman yet, still just Arthur Curry, but he has all his strength and durability. 4 dudes at a bar shouldn't even be a fight for him. In this scene, we also learn that Aquaman is being stalked by 2 different parties. 2 guys in a car taking pictures of him who have discovered his Atlantean origin, and the other who is just obviously Mara. Cyborg finds the wrecked submarine and is immediately attacked by Atlanteans who actually mess him up pretty bad. He decides to call a meeting with the entire League, but no one shows up besides Barry Allen and Shazam. This leads to a scene where they go out to physically summon the rest of the League, and even then, Batman still doesn't show up. So Green Lantern goes out to find Batman. He's obviously mid-chase because we really need an action scene to pad out the runtime. I've been saying that these movies' biggest issue is that there's just so much dead air and, not enough content stuffed in here. There's a concept called page real estate in script writing. Basically, every page equates to roughly 1 minute. So when your movie is about 70 minutes long, you can't really waste any of those pages on scenes that aren't going to contribute to the overall plot. This is the 3rd movie in this universe, and I really don't know anything about these characters. Instead of another Batman chase scene, why not take a minute to slow down and establish a theme that ties into the rest of the movie? What's funny is they had a solution right in front of them. Aquaman is a character who was raised on Earth by humans, but is Atlantean royalty by birthright. However, it feels wrong to him, like a gift he didn't earn. In the scene where Cyborg comes to find Superman and Wonder Woman, the 2 are at a diner, and Wonder Woman makes a brief comment before he gets there about how wearing glasses like Clark Kent works so well to help hide among the humans and pretend that she's one of them. Superman explains that it's not hiding among the humans, it's about becoming one of them. So while they're technically not human, they still have a place with them, and it's up for them to take it. So maybe we could have had a scene or two where Superman teaches Wonder Woman that while she might not have been born a human, among the humans, she has a rightful place with them. Then as the movie goes on, she realizes this and internalizes it, and she has to teach that to Aquaman, even though he was born on the surface and was raised by humans, that his place in Atlantis is his to take. It's his birthright. It's like an inverse of her story, and she can only teach it to him when she learns it herself. And then when he's finally realizes this lesson, he's able to rightfully take a seat on the throne. The Atlanteans gain respect for him, and not only does the conflict resolve, but Wonder Woman and Aquaman both have arcs they've undergone. But if we do all that, we can't see the bat plane or get a Scarecrow reference or stop by Gotham for a minute, and let's be honest, what matters more? So we now get to introduce the primary conflict of the movie. King Orm, Aquaman's half-brother, wants the throne for himself. He hates the surface world and feels his mother, the current queen, is too weak to lead Atlantis. So to escalate this, he has Black Manta disguise his ship as a surface world submarine and pull a 9/11 on Atlantis. For a guy who hates the surface world, he sure loves the Bush Handbook. He also sends a group of soldiers to kill Aquaman in his home. Suddenly, a dude who was getting rocked by 4 guys at a bar is able to fight elite Atlantean soldiers who would have to be much stronger than regular humans and much more well trained. Fortunately, Mera shows up in time to save him, literally using her water magic to cut someone in half at one point. Batman and Superman show up at the house of this scientist who was investigating Aquaman. He was killed a little bit ago and was also the same guy who was taking pictures of him. Batman uses research to discover that Aquaman is actually half Atlantean because he literally has gills on the side of his fucking neck. Really takes a genius to crack that one. Back underwater, Orm is really pushing for a war with the surface world. The Queen is still not having it, but she realizes something has to be done. So she decides to initiate peace talks with the Justice League and has Orm put his super shady assistant, Black Manta, in charge of organizing them. What is she, stupid? The rest of the League is working to try to fight Atlantis. Early in the movie, we met this researcher lady who wants to do tricks on Cyborg's Robocock. She walks in to talk with Cyborg, and he just tells her to fuck off because he's busy. They make it clear that he doesn't want to reject her, but feels he has to for some reason. However, I have a feeling this isn't going to be touched on again because it doesn't involve Batman or fighting. Aquaman suits up in his gear and is immediately jumped by a bunch of trench monsters sent by Black Manta, but the League shows up in time to save him. Mera asks him to go to Atlantis to help unite the two worlds. He's pretty skeptical until Superman tells him if he had the chance to go to Krypton and meet his people, he would take it. I mean, that's close to what I was talking about earlier, so, I mean, good job for putting that effort in.
I mean, it's alright, like...
Orm decides to confront the Queen about her having an illegitimate son, but she ain't having none of that and justifies her affair by saying she did it to unite the surface world with Atlantis. She also says she knows that Orm orchestrated the 9/11 attack, but for some reason, she didn't bring this up earlier during the big meeting where everyone was pissed at her and looking for someone to blame for the attack. Orm says fuck it and just stabs her before taking the throne for himself and preparing for war. The League goes to Atlantis with Aquaman. Orm finds them and admits to killing the Queen himself. He just one-taps the Justice League and decides to feed them to an underwater monster so he can go lead his army against the surface. Orm in this movie is voiced by Sam Witwer. You probably recognize him as Darth Maul or Starkiller in Star Wars. And he gives such a silly, unhinged performance here. It's awesome.
Kenobi!
Aquaman gets into a scrap with Black Manta, who immediately just goes racist mode on him.
Trash.
He reveals that he was behind the whole thing, pulling all the strings and manipulating Orm. Aquaman beats him by summoning a fucking megalodon to jump out of the water and eat his ass. Maybe he should have recruited Jason Statham. He could have fought the megalodon.
Chew on this, you ugly...
During the fight, we're treated to a random Steel cameo for no reason. Yes, Steel, the beloved comic book character played by Shaquille O'Neal. Why does he have a cameo here? I mean, fan service. So, the League gangs up on Orm again, and once again, he just smokes all of them, which is insane, because I'm not the biggest Aquaman fan, but as far as I know, Ocean Master is never, like, a single-handed Justice League level threat. But I do want to talk about something they do get right here, namely Barry Allen. I know he's kind of a non-presence in these movies, as I've stated, but in the rare moments where he's not, he's actually written like Barry Allen. There's been this weird phenomenon over the years where Flash is always written like Wally West, but is still Barry Allen. So it's nice to see a version that still feels like Barry. I actually think Aquaman is well adapted in this movie. He's not just super heavily influenced by Momoa's version of the character. Not that I dislike that take, it's just that he acts like Lobo, not Aquaman. So it's nice to just see Aquaman in the Aquaman movie, or the Justice League movie with Aquaman. Batman recharges Cyborg's batteries and has him project a hologram of Orm admitting to murdering the Queen. This obviously upsets the Atlanteans, and they all look at him pretty upset. Aquaman decides to step up and take the throne, leading to peace between both worlds. It isn't like as poorly written of an arc as Damian's in the last movie, where he just kind of makes this change out of nowhere, but it feels a little bit hollow because it's a duty he seems to only accept largely because the movie needs him to do it. We're back at the League headquarters where Cyborg is getting put back together. The scientist lady still wants his Robocock, but this time Cyborg accepts. Why? Maybe he's not busy right now. I guess his schedule cleared up. End of the movie. Once again, good potential here. I actually think this movie realized it pretty well. I enjoyed some of the arcs and the character work here. I do think that Arthur's character could have gained so much from more scenes with Wonder Woman and Superman, where they teach him a lesson for him to use by the end of the movie. But, you know, that's not what ended up happening. The character designs in this universe are generally actually pretty good. It's not like Justice League New Frontiers, where the movie is a bit weak at times, but the art direction is so good, you can just ignore that. I guess like the art in these movies is trying very hard to feel like the comics, but it's not as visually striking. But whatever, I generally enjoyed this movie. Good job. The New 52 is kind of a controversial series of books. They made a lot of changes, and we all know people hate change. But take my word for it, no one hates change more than the comic book community. They take change about as well as a 6-year-old being told that daddy's going to be spending the weekends at a different house now. But there were some well-received titles that came out of this new run. The crown jewel of this collection, however, was Scott Snyder's Batman, a book that took the comic book world by storm. Now, typically guys named Snyder getting their hands on Batman leads to mass discord among the community, but the praise of this book was universal, and its first arc, The Court of Owls, is probably the most important and influential Batman story in the past 20 years. Some people may not want to hear this, but it's true. The Court of Owls are everywhere now. They've been adapted in Gotham Knights, the video game, and the TV show. They've appeared in the show Gotham, and are even seen in the Harley Quinn animated show. And during the lead up to Matt Reeves' Batman movie, there was immense fan outcry for them to appear in the film, and people scoured over the trailer searching for any references to them. And now, with the recent announcement that the Batman 2 is moving forward, that conversation about the Court of Owls appearing has been brought back up again. And me personally, New 52 Batman is one of my favorite comic books ever produced. In high school, I read through every volume cover to cover multiple times. And the great news is, this should be a perfect candidate for an adaptation. Court of Owls is a great book on all fronts, but its real strength lies in its very strong narrative. The movie can focus on just adapting the plot, the action, and the world building, and they will have a banger movie on their hands. This movie opens up with Damian going solo to catch the doll maker because the comic just wasn't enough source material to cover 70 minutes. They had to make up a new story to introduce the movie. I'm sure we're not going to lose out on any important content from the book for the sake of cramming in this opener. Dollmaker lets out his horde of brainwashed, experimented on kids just as Batman arrives, and these two are here for business. These kids might be brainwashed zombies acting against their own will, but Batman and Robin do not pull a single punch. They hit these kids with the nastiest combo meals I've ever seen. Even the parademons weren't getting worked this bad. It's insane. Dollmaker takes off, so Damian chases after him. I really quickly want to call attention to the fact that Dollmaker is voiced by Weird Al. Not sure why he did this. He's barely in this movie because he dies immediately, but he gives 110% to this role. I just love a weird cameo. So, as I mentioned, some dude comes out of nowhere and rips Dollmaker's fucking heart out. Fans of the comic will recognize this as a Talon, an elite assassin working for the Court of Owls. Batman finally catches up and assumes Damian killed Dollmaker, which would be a forgivable mistake if Batman wasn't the world's greatest detective. How can you rip someone's heart out without getting blood on your gloves, genius? Batman hits Damian some pretty scathing words until he says he doesn't kill out of respect for Batman. Respect he must have gained since the last movie, because I didn't see none of that respect in part 1. In the end, Batman kind of walks away looking like a dick. At Wayne Manor, Bruce is putting the moves on some socialite lady whose name I can't remember. After she leaves, Bruce tries to sit down and watch a movie with Damien. This is good. I like this. This is the type of stuff I need these movies to start doing. Just having fun, bonding moments with the character to make them feel like they know each other outside of the exact plot of the movie. We learned that Bruce is keeping Damien's existence hidden from the public, and it's obviously putting a strain on their relationship because he feels like a prisoner in his own home. Connecting with people on a personal level has always been one of Batman's shortcomings as a character. The core conflict of this movie is Damien parting ways with Bruce, which is actually a good idea because it lets you weave the main narrative in with the personal character narrative journey. It's a story where the plot and actions have to be dictated by the feelings and emotions of the characters. But if you expect me to care about the breakdown of a relationship, I need to care about the relationship in the first place, which I do not, and this is why character moments are so important, because they let you take stuff like this seriously. And no, it doesn't require a lot of time. Look at this scene from God of War. It takes place in the first 15 minutes of the game. The moment that ties it all together takes about 10 seconds, and the entire scene is only 2 minutes. This is a really brilliant piece of storytelling because it shows us so much about these characters without them ever having to say how they're feeling or even talk at all. You see that Kratos is willing and able to help Atreus to kill the deer because killing is all he knows, but when he sees that Atreus is upset by having to kill it, he wants to reach out to comfort him, but he doesn't know how, so he pulls his hand away before Atreus can even see that he tried. This shows us that he loves Atreus, but he's not close with him, and he himself doesn't understand what to do with these feelings. Kratos is a character who only understands rage and anger. Comforting and love is not something he's ever been able to get in touch with emotionally. The music helps effectively drive home the emotion, and the act of the scene itself, killing the deer, is also going to emotionally resonate with people. Imagine if the movie had a scene like this. Damien has just gone through a lot. Not only has he been raised by an assassin death cult since birth, his grandfather who raised him was burned to death in front of him, and he had to watch as he was unable to save him. He was taken from his home and is put in a new environment where he has to live with his father, who he's never met before. Batman is a character who's never truly processed his family's death in a healthy way. He's only learned to cope with it. This is such an easy layup. How hard would it be to put in a scene where Damien needs Bruce but can't bring himself to come out and say it? Bruce sees that he's in pain and wants to help but can't because of the aforementioned unresolved trauma. Halfway through the movie, Damien gets sick of Bruce, who he thinks just doesn't care about him, and goes off to work with the Talent, who he believes understands him better and will actually look out for him. Bruce is forced to actually resolve his issues and confront Damien and the Talent, except this time he's able to connect with Damien, apologize, and ask for his forgiveness. He gains Damien's respect, they work together again, and you still get the big badass fight at the end that you wanted. There were probably moments like this in these movies, and the producers told the writers, no, sorry, you have to include another scene where Batman fights fucking Quote Man or something. That's just how this goes. We get another Nightwing cameo. Batman calls him up to watch Damien for the night. Nightwing doesn't have a role in this universe outside of cameo. We get a Nightwing Robin rematch, and Damien drops another I'm his real son bar on him. Why is this dynamic never touched on more? Nightwing could be a great way to bridge the gap between Bruce and Damien. He could talk with Bruce and show him his shortcomings as a father and a mentor, and put Bruce on the right path. He could also really connect with Damien. He's the only other person on Earth who knows what it's like to be raised by Bruce, and he can give Damien insight to who he is as a person and help him look past his emotion and try to understand him better. Because in this universe, there was never any other Robins. It was just from Dick Grayson straight to Damien. It is confirmed that Tim and Jason and Carrie were never Robin in this universe. I know I keep bringing stuff like this up, but interpersonal conflict is what helps people invest in a story. Look at Star Wars. The original trilogy works so well because we understand the main group as people. They argue, they have disagreements, and it helps us understand them so that when they encounter conflict in the story, we care because we know them. And they feel very fleshed out. Because of their disagreements and their arguments, we know that the way Han Solo would approach a conflict is completely different from the way Luke would, and completely different from the way Princess Leia would. They're very well developed and understood characters because they disagree. And do you think the Avengers would have been as successful if it wasn't for the dynamic between Cap and Tony? Like, their rivalry and friendship is one of the things that makes those characters so iconic. But anyways, back to the actual movie. Batman follows some ridiculous lead and ends up at this museum where he's jumped by a gang of Talons. They mess him up pretty bad, but before they can kill him, they all dissolve into puddles of goo. As Batman sits there thinking about his ass whooping, we get a flashback to his childhood. Much like the comics, a young Bruce Wayne suspected the Court of Owls as responsible for the death of his parents. He investigated the group before finding what he believed was their meeting place, but he searched it and found nothing, so he gave up. I don't know why they made this change, but in the comics, Bruce's search led him to spending days trapped in the attic of an abandoned building. It was a search that nearly killed him at a young age, so abandoning it made sense. In this, he just isn't able to crack the world's biggest mystery in 2 days at the age of 11 and never revisits it. Damian escapes Wayne Manor and is approached by the Talon, who tries to recruit him to work for him. Talon claims to pretty much have the same ambitions, rid Gotham of crime once and for all by any means necessary. Talon sends him on his way and is like, "Don't tell Batman about me," which is Stranger Danger 101. He comes home and Batman just straight up threatens to send him to military school in Switzerland if he doesn't shape up, which is insane and hilarious. Bruce talks to Nightwing and Damian overhears him saying that maybe biological ties don't make people father and son. He gets mad and leaves to find the Talon. Bruce decides to go on a date with the blonde chick from earlier, but some cars run him off the road. He wakes up in a Court of Owls meeting where I guess they've decided he's a chill guy and they want him to join their club. Their vetting process must be pretty tame, because if they were even monitoring Bruce Wayne, they would have seen Robin hopping over his front gate for the past 3 nights in a row. He just drops a "let me get back to you," and fortunately they're all cool with it and let him go home. They're even nice enough to let him plant a beeping, blinking red tracking device in the mask they offered him so he can come back and find them later. There is one guy on the team who's sussed out by Bruce, but the Grandmaster is for no reason extremely confident that all of Bruce's altruism is just for show and he's secretly an evil, greedy bastard, which is a very big, unverified claim to stake the future of your ancient Illuminati group on. Talon and Robin go beat down on some criminals, but Robin refuses to kill him and is like, "Let's send him to prison for life." As if killing criminals wasn't the only element of the pitch Talon gave him when they first met. He basically just said, "Hey, you should ditch Batman and come work with me. We'll kill criminals." There wasn't a second benefit, like good dental or paid vacations. That was the end of the deal. Batman pulls up to stop Talon, but Damian decides to throw hands to keep Batman from following him. Boom, we can now call the movie Batman vs. Robin. Robin decides to go on his own way, and we cut to the Talon who's banging the blonde chick that was dating Bruce earlier. Turns out she's the Grandmaster of the Court of Owls. Batman follows his tracker he planted earlier and ends up in the court's maze. This is probably the single most iconic moment from the comics. In fact, it's the one thing that Gotham Knights straight up adapted for one of the missions. In the comics, this issue rules. Bruce is trapped in the maze for days, wandering aimlessly, and knowingly drinking laced water so he can just survive. When he's broken down by hallucinations and is half dead and barely cognizant from a lack of food and water, he beats a Talon by punching him through a marble wall and using scavenged materials to create an explosive and escape the maze. In the movie, it's a 20-second sequence where he has a quick hallucination, then wakes up at the Batcave. Turns out he was only gone for 7 hours before Nightwing found him and brought him back home. The Talon is bringing Damian to initiate him in the Court of Owls. Damian takes off his mask and the Grandmaster recognizes him, realizing that this means Bruce Wayne is Batman. So that means that everyone here is about to have a death sentence, because discovering that Bruce Wayne is Batman just means you're going to have to die. So the Talon goes Insano style and murders everyone so he can wake up the Talons himself and kill Batman, so him and Damian can live happily ever after. Batman and Nightwing fight off the Talons at Wayne Manor, but Nightwing gets hurt pretty bad. The action is admittedly pretty cool. I think this is why people online like this movie so much. Batman even suits up in a badass robot suit at one point, just like the comics, and lays a historic beatdown. Alfred whips out the shotgun and starts pumping lead and posing like he's on the cover of the original Resident Evil. They manage to lower the Batcave temperature and freeze all the Talons because they are weakened by low temperatures, except for the main one, who crashes the Batmobile into the robot suit and destroys it. He manages to beat down Bruce, but Damian steps in to save him. They fight and Damian tells him, "You can never replace Batman, he's my father." Which is like not a journey that this character's been going on. Like, that's not the point of this movie's story. We actually saw some growth with Bruce learning to realize how he needs to treat Damian in his hallucination, but Damian didn't get a chance to grow himself. Batman drops a "I'm proud of you, welcome home," but then Damian rejects that shit. He says everyone's in his head, his mom, Roz, and Batman, so he's got to go to a monastery and learn to find himself. And the movie ends. You know, that last Batman movie must have been a huge hit because not even a whole year later, WB decided it warranted a sequel. This time they're adapting Grant Morrison's Batman Incorporated, which I guess kind of makes sense. This story is from the era where Morrison created Damian. This movie opens up with a gang of super criminals torturing some mob guy for information. You know, just typical Gotham nightlife activities, when suddenly they're jumped by Batman. Even more typical Gotham nightlife activity. It doesn't take long for them to realize that Batman's throwing lead, which is confusing because Batman has a pretty strict no guns policy. Now, I can understand some overconfident supercriminals thinking they can take Batman, but the second he pulls out the Glock, I think it's time to go into retirement. They quickly realize that it's actually Batwoman, not Batman. I guess the red wig was a giveaway. The real Batman quickly pulls up, and it seems like Batwoman isn't exactly news to him. He's kind of just like, good afternoon, just don't shoot anyone in the face. Then drops a super lazy, if you use guns or kill, you're just as bad as every other criminal. Like, you know you're a criminal too, Batman. You break a lot of laws, but you give yourself a pass because you've, like, personally justified why you do it. Anyways, Batman and Batwoman both get dogged on by this guy called Heretic, who is a big dude in a Batman gimp suit, who says he knows Batman intimately, but not at all. So I guess they had like a one-night stand. He triggers an explosion that launches Batwoman out of the building, but ends up taking Batman with him. We then cut to a monastery where Damian is scrubbing floors. At night, while watching his iPad, he sees a news story talking about how Batman has gone missing and decides it's time to come back to Gotham. So what was the point of him leaving in the last movie? He was going to come back 5 minutes into the next. There better be some kind of change or growth in his character, damn it. Next, we get a scene at Wayne Enterprises where we're introduced to Luke Fox, Lucius Fox's son. Oh god, this is going to be one of those movies, isn't it? You know what I'm talking about. One of those movies that tries to drum up online relevancy by shoving as many comic characters as it can into the script, hoping they can get some free advertising from a stupid-ass comicbook.com article that's like, have you seen all the awesome comic fan favorites appearing in DC's newest movie? Like, nobody cares. Take a look at Under the Red Hood. Wouldn't it have been so much better if they spent half the runtime focusing on Wildcat and Stephanie Brown, while also making sure their plots had little to do with the rest of the movie? No, of course not. Under the Red Hood is still talked about because they made sure that you cared about the characters. That way, when you got to the end and you saw Jason's speech to Batman, you actually gave a shit. Showing that movie to anyone with a beating heart and a parental figure, and they're gonna feel something when you get to that ending scene. Unlike with this movie, where I don't really feel anything, especially not with Luke Fox. I still barely even care about Damian. Why don't you figure him out first before you start cluttering up the script with other characters? And remember, these movies only have about an hour and 15. Developing a plot and character over the course of a movie takes time and focus. When you introduce a character to a movie as a writer, I think it's important to ask yourself, what is this character adding to the story? Would the movie still work if this character wasn't in it? Would the movie be better if they were taken out entirely? We're going to be asking these questions a lot more going forward. And again, this is very clearly a producer/studio mandated directive to shove in Batwing and Batwoman and more stuff that happens towards the end of this movie. These are decisions that are made by executives who are like, we can market this better if you put in more characters. So remember that. That's how scripts end up the way they are in Hollywood. Next, we get a scene at a diner with Batwoman, Kate Kane, and her dad. In this scene, we're given this flashback where we get a glimpse of her past. She's being held hostage with her mom and her sister are killed before her dad bursts in and saves them. It's some kind of like military conflict scenario. Her dad is very clearly a military figure. Just to give context for this scene. Will this flashback be connected to the plot or themes in any meaningful way? Let's find out. We then see that Dick has taken up the mantle as Batman in his absence and is going after Gotham's criminals. This leads to a very personal gripe I have with this movie and DC as a whole. I won't go overboard with details, but Black Mask is my favorite DC villain, and every time this dude shows up in a DC project, it's just to get his ass beat. Like in this movie, where he has a 30-second screen time cameo, and it's just for Damian to detonate his grenade launcher and melt his mask to his face. Eventually, Kate tracks down Damian and Dick. She's immediately able to recognize that it's just Nightwing playing Batman, which causes a problem later on, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. She offers them nothing of substance and fucks off. So what did she add to this scene? We're back in the Batmobile with Dick and Damian when Damian says he's probably happy that Bruce is gone so he can get to be Batman. Dick tells them off, explaining how he hates having to be Batman and how he spent years trying to make his own identity. This is actually a really interesting concept. It's done a lot in the comics. It's one of my favorite elements of the time in Grant Morrison's run when Dick Grayson was playing Batman. So I like that they incorporated that here. We then find out that Batman had been following Kate for a while. Nightwing claims to also know her pretty well, which leads me to my problem I mentioned earlier. If she can recognize Nightwing disguised as Batman, how could she not recognize that Nightwing is Dick? Whatever, we learn her backstory again, except this time, everything gets spelled out for anyone in the audience who didn't get it the first time. I don't know why. Once again, we get another scene with Lucius and Luke. Luke says he's caught on to the fact that Lucius is making tech for Batman. Lucius denies it, but that lie kind of blows up in his face when Gimp Batman and his gang of bozos bust into his office and force him to take them to his secret vault of Batman gear. After getting the gear he needs, Gimp Batman stabs Lucius. Batman and Robin show up. Electrocutioner nearly fries Robin to death, so Gimp Batman kills him. We get jump scared by a scene of Batman having a four-way. It gets kind of wild when he realizes that one of the women is wearing his mother's pearls. We get transported to yet another Crime Alley flashback. Yay, we've spent more time here than we have with the Flash. Turns out Bruce has been strung up in some high-tech machine that Mad Hatter is using to zap all his memories and read his mind. Turns out all this silliness has been orchestrated by Talia al Ghul. It's not exactly clear at this point what her plan is, but she's trying to dig something out of Bruce's mind. Back at the hospital, Lucius is hanging on for dear life, so Luke decides that he wants in on the Bat family. Dick shuts him down and goes off to have a meeting with Kate. He lets her know he's onto her and reveals that he's Nightwing. Kate drops her second origin in this movie. Apparently, when she was in her 20s, she was getting attacked by some goons when Batman saved her ass, so she decided to become a superhero. Back in the Batcave, Damian gets kidnapped by Gimp Batman, so Kate and Dick have to go save him. Damian wakes up in the same chamber as Batman, and Gimp Batman reveals he's a clone of Damian matured to full age. His plan is to have Mad Hatter take Damian's consciousness into his body so he can have a soul. Didn't anyone tell him these movies don't have soul? Talia decides to just kill him, so there goes the primary threat of this movie. I don't know why they did that. Gimp Batman is actually a pretty cool character in the comics. Like I said, he's called Heretic. They also call him that here, but calling him Gimp Batman is funnier. He actually killed Damian in the comics, which led Batman to a pretty dark place. I even like his suit in the comics a lot. It doesn't just look like, I keep saying Gimp suit Batman, but whatever, that's the design they went with. Kate and Dick show up to save Damian from this monastery he's being held hostage at. They have to fight a bunch of the nuns from Hitman Absolution. Luke also shows up in this crazy high-tech suit of armor he stole from his dad's office in an earlier scene. The whole monastery starts coming down, but luckily, Damian and Bruce already escaped. Instead of thanking Kate and Luke for their help, Bruce basically tells them to eat a dick and leaves, which in all fairness is pretty on brand for the character. We then skip a week ahead and find out that Bruce is scheduled to host some kind of high-tech summit where a bunch of important people from across the world are attending. I'm sure this has nothing to do with the villain's evil scheme at all. Batman doubles down on telling Kate and Luke to eat a bag of dicks. Back at her apartment, Kate is decrypting this hard drive they took from the monastery when her dad's phone rings and he goes John Wick mode trying to kill her. Kate knocks him out but doesn't understand why he attacked her. Bruce arrives at the summit and announces that Wayne Tech is giving everyone there the Neuralink. He also announces the Watchtower Initiative. It's never explained, but the whole building grows engines and flies off to fucking space, and everyone just claps. If someone launched me into space without my consent, I'd be freaking the fuck out. Also, there's no way you can trick foreign dignitaries onto a spaceship and fly them off without getting the death penalty. I mean, unless it was going to Epstein Island, then they'd probably fuck with it. But before it flies off, Mad Hatter and Talia's other goons break into the summit building, and they take control of the Neuralink stuff. Talia orders Hatter to brainwash everyone into being completely loyal to the League of Assassins and reactivates Bruce Wayne's mind control, ordering him to knock out Alfred. Back in Gotham, Kate tells Dick and Damian that she thinks Talia got into Bruce's head and used the info she got from him to learn her identity and brainwash her dad. Luke shows up and tells them about the attack of the summit, so they all fly off to save the day. They get to the Watchtower and everyone breaks off into groups to fight. Damian fights Tusk? Nightwing fights Batman, Kate fights Talia, and Batwing fights Firefly. Damian fights Tusk and Batwoman fights Talia. Were these people smoking crack when they lined up these fights? In my lightsaber duels video, I explain how emotional subtext can elevate a fight and make it more interesting to an audience. What is interesting about Kate fighting Talia? Is it because they're both women? They don't even know each other. Damian's psycho mom created a clone of him that she could control and replace him with, then killed it for getting too emotionally complicated. These movies also really miss Grant Morrison's characterization of Talia. She's portrayed in a really interesting way in the book. She's an obsessive, compulsive control freak who needs everything to be perfect and hates anything that can't be controlled. She's a narcissistic mass murderer. In the comic this movie is based on, she reveals the heretic clone to Damian just to say fuck you because he won't do everything she says. He asks her why she can't just love him for who he is, and she says she does in her own way, but tells him that he's her op for life now. But the pattern recognition in my brain says that women and women are the same, so they should fight each other. Alfred wakes up and stops the brainwashing process by punching Cutler, one of Talia's goons, into this power box, which overloads the device on Mad Hatter's brain and violently expands and explodes his head. This is the kind of death you save generally for someone who's done something super fucking evil and the audience will hate. Like, if you read comics, you know that Mad Hatter's pretty evil, but in this movie, he hasn't really done anything that bad. Why did he deserve the Saw-level death? I don't know. The movie eventually reaches its climax. Talia throws a gun to Batman and tells him to kill Nightwing. Damian runs in to stop him, but she tells Bruce to just execute him too. Everyone's basically defeated, so their only hope is to talk him out of the mind control. This would be a more effective moment if we had any context to their relationship. This is movie number 3, and there's been no real moments where Bruce bonds with Damian or Nightwing. But Nightwing tells him that he's so great because he brought all of them together because he understands their pain better than anyone else. And yeah, that's true for Dick, but everyone else? I mean, Damian was dropped on him against his will, and I've gone over the lack of progress in the relationship for the past 2 parts of this. Then Luke and Kate had nothing to do with, and he told them to get fucked. He didn't bring any of them together except for Nightwing. But this is so inspiring to Bruce that he's able to break free from the mind control and points the gun at himself. Talia freaks out and tries to kill Nightwing, but Batman gains back complete control and shoots the sword out of her hand.
We tired of playing with your ass, nigga. Today your ass is gonna die.
She tries to run away, but every time she does, someone comically gets in front of her like a Scooby-Doo gag. So she takes the third option and jumps out the window and lands on an escape ship. She flies away, but as she does, she's killed by one of the nameless assassins from the monastery, who just drops down and executes her for killing Heretic. The ship crashes and they both die. Talia, the character with the most complicated relationship to Batman and the mother of Robin, dies a silent death at the hands of a no-name character with none of the main characters in sight to comment, react, or have any involvement with this scene. Why would they do this? Everyone returns home to recover. We see what Alfred calls a heart-to-heart between Damian and Bruce, which is just them standing still and not talking. Then we get the worst bait ending of all time. Bruce assembles the team, including Batwing and Batwoman, and they ride off into the night to stop the Penguin. But before the credits roll, we see someone emerge from the shadows. Batgirl, Barbara Gordon, a character who has never even been shown or referenced before. She just appears. Anyways, I'm not sure why Batman agreed to assemble this team officially. It's not like he learned a lesson or anything that would lead him to change his mind. And Batman learning to trust other people is a great story. It's literally the plot of the Lego Batman movie. And if you know game, you know that Lego Batman is awesome. I think this ending could have worked. We saw him pushing Luke and Kate away, but maybe if we had seen more of them in the previous movies, that would make this more impactful. He helps them out in their personal lives how he can, but always refuses their help. Then at the end, when he's being mind controlled, we see him trying to break free of it on his own. He's inside his own mind, trying to fight back, but failing. Then he looks around him in the real world and sees Kate and Dick and Damian and Luke are all there with him. And that's how he finally musters up the strength to break free with their support. They help him stop Talia, and this is what inspires him to put the team together because he realizes that there will be times and moments when he needs them. So this is the end of part 1. We've covered 5 movies. I'm sure I'll get comments telling me that these movies are just like fun movies and not to overthink it. There's clearly an audience for these. They make them for a few mil and double their budget each time. We could be getting stuff like Return of the Joker or Mask of the Phantasm, but I don't know. Whatever. That's it for part 1. We'll be back for part 2 soon. Alright, goodbye.